The sun was setting on Rodeo Drive, casting a golden light on the fancy stores. Keanu Reeves, dressed in a simple black t-shirt, faded jeans and sneakers, walked down the sidewalk. He didn't look like a movie star, just a normal guy enjoying a walk. But he had something special in mind. He stopped in front of a fancy store that sold very expensive things. Through the glass window he saw something sparkling, a beautiful watch that would be the perfect gift for someone he cared about. Keanu smiled to himself, happy with his choice. As he reached for the door handle, a young man in a fancy suit stopped him. "Excuse me, sir," he said in a polite way, but his face showed he was judging Keanu. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" Keanu looked at the man and smiled warmly. "I think so. I'm here to buy a gift," he said, pointing to the display case with the sparkling watch. The young man looked Keanu up and down, seeing his casual clothes. "I'm sorry, but this store is very special," he said. "Maybe you would feel more comfortable shopping somewhere else." Keanu didn't get mad. Instead, he looked at the young man and asked calmly, "Are you saying I can't shop here just because of how I'm dressed?" The young man wasn't sure how to answer. "It's not that, sir," he said. "It's just that this store is for a certain type of customer. If you don't have an appointment or a lot of money to spend, we recommend shopping somewhere else. We want everyone to feel comfortable." Keanu didn't argue or get angry. He just nodded and said, "I understand. Thank you for letting me know." The young man was surprised by Keanu's calmness, but Keanu simply turned around and walked away. As Keanu walked down the street, he thought about what had just happened. He wasn't upset for himself, but he felt bad for other people who might have been treated that way and felt bad about it. He wanted to do something to help others understand what had happened. Keanu wasn't angry. He wanted to make a difference. He stopped at a small cafe where he ordered a coffee and sat down to think. After a few minutes, he called a friend. "Hey, it's Keanu," he said. "Can you help me with something tomorrow morning?" His friend was curious, but Keanu didn't explain. "You'll see. It's going to be worth it," he said with a smile. The next morning at exactly 10 a.m., a fancy black car pulled up in front of the same luxury store. A group of people stopped to watch, wondering who was inside. When the door opened, Keanu stepped out wearing a nice black suit. He looked confident, and his presence caught everyone's attention. He was followed by some assistants and a cameraman. Inside the store, the young man who had stopped Keanu the day before was talking to a coworker. He didn't recognize Keanu at first, but when he saw him walking toward him, his face went pale. "Good morning," Keanu said politely. "I believe we met yesterday." The young man stuttered, "Oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry. I didn't realize. Keanu raised a hand gently to stop him. "No need for apologies," Keanu said. "I'm not here to talk about yesterday. I'm here because I think we all have something to learn." Just then the store manager came over. She was a middle-aged woman with a strong presence. "Jonathan Reed, welcome. How can we help you?" she asked politely. Keanu smiled and said, "Thank you. Before I buy anything, I'd like to talk about something that happened yesterday." The room went quiet as everyone listened. Keanu continued, "Yesterday I came in wearing what I always wear. Casual clothes. And I was told that I didn't belong here." His voice was calm, but his words made everyone stop and think. "I was judged by how I looked, not by who I am. And while I'm okay with it, many people might not be. They might feel bad about it." The store manager looked embarrassed. "I'm so sorry, Jonathan Reed," she said. "This is not how we want our customers to feel." Keanu raised his hand again to stop her from talking. "I'm not here to make anyone feel bad. I know sometimes people make assumptions. What's important is how we treat others, no matter what they look like or what they wear." He turned to the young man who had stopped him the day before and smiled kindly. "You probably didn't mean any harm. You were just following what you were taught. But I want to challenge those ideas." Keanu pointed to the door where more people were watching. "Every person who walks through that door deserves respect. No matter what they're wearing or what they look like. It's not about who they are or what they have. Everyone should be treated with dignity." The room was quiet. The young man looked down and said softly, "You're right. I'm sorry for how I treated you." Keanu smiled. "It's okay. But remember, it's not just about me. It's about everyone who comes in here." He turned back to the manager. "Now about that watch. I'd like to buy every single one in the display case." The manager blinked, surprised. "All of them?" "Yes," Keanu said with a nod. "And I want them delivered to some charities I support. There are people who need them more than I do." The manager quickly agreed. "Of course, Jonathan Reed. We'll take care of it right away." As Keanu was about to leave, he turned to the young man and said, "Thank you for yesterday. It gave me a chance to remind myself and maybe others that kindness is free, but it means a lot. Keanu stepped outside and waved to the crowd of people watching. He got into the black SUV and the door closed softly behind him. The store was left in silence as the manager turned to the young man. "You're lucky it was Keanu Reeves," she said. "It could have gone much worse for you." The young man nodded, his face still red. I didn't think he would." The manager sighed. "Let this be a lesson. We're not just selling products. We're representing something bigger. If we can't treat everyone with respect, then we don't deserve their business." Later that day, a video of Keanu's visit was posted online. The video showed him talking to the staff, calmly teaching them a lesson. It went viral, with millions of people sharing and commenting, praising Keanu for his kindness and grace. People said things like, "This is why we love Keanu," and "Imagine judging someone like him just by their clothes." Shameful, but such a powerful lesson. The story spread quickly, and soon the boutique found itself in the spotlight. Reporters reached out for comments, and the store's PR team worked hard to fix the situation. In the store's back office, the manager held a meeting with all the employees. The atmosphere was tense. "We messed up," the manager said. "And now the whole world knows it." She turned to the young man who had stopped Keanu. "You made a mistake, but so did all of us. This is a chance for us to learn and do better." The young man nodded. "I'm really sorry," he said. "I know," the manager said. "But intent doesn't change the impact. We're going to do better. Tomorrow we're starting training on customer service and unconscious bias. We're also making a new rule. Everyone who comes into this store deserves respect, no matter who they are or what they wear." The employees nodded, some agreeing, some looking unsure. The manager added, "We're lucky that Keanu Reeves is who he is, a kind and forgiving person. But we can't rely on luck. We need to make sure this never happens again." Meanwhile, Keanu was at home, looking through the messages he had received after the incident. Many people shared their own stories of being judged because of how they looked. One message caught his eye. It was from a young woman who said, "I've always been treated like I'm invisible because I don't look like I belong in fancy places. Thank you for standing up for people like me." Keanu smiled. He was happy his actions had helped others feel seen and valued. He replied to the message, "Thank you for sharing your story. Always remember, your worth isn't decided by how others see you. It's about who you are." The next morning, Keanu posted a message on his social media. It said, "Yesterday I had an experience that reminded me how important it is to treat everyone with kindness and respect. We all make assumptions, but those assumptions can hurt people in ways we don't always see. Let's challenge ourselves to be better. Let's lead with empathy and remember that every person has a story worth hearing." The post quickly received millions of likes and comments. People from all over the world agreed with him and shared their own thoughts. Keanu's message of kindness had spread far and wide. "Keanu, you made a mistake, but so did all of us. This isn't just about one thing that happened. It's about the way we treat people." The salesperson lowered his gaze, feeling ashamed. "I'm really sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." The manager interrupted, shaking their head. "I know, but just because you didn't mean to doesn't make it okay. What matters now is how we handle this situation. Starting tomorrow, we will have special training to teach all of us how to treat customers kindly and fairly. We'll also have a new rule that says every customer, no matter what they look like, should be treated with the same respect. Everyone deserves that." The workers looked at each other, some nodding in agreement, others looking uneasy. The manager's voice softened slightly as they continued, "We're lucky that Keanu is such a kind person, but we can't always count on luck to fix things. We need to do better so this doesn't happen again." Meanwhile, Keanu was at home, reading all the messages people sent him. There were messages from fans, friends, and even strangers who shared their own stories about being treated unfairly because of how they looked. One message stood out to him. It was from a young woman who said, "I've always been treated like I'm not important because I don't look like I belong in fancy places. Thank you for standing up for people like me." Keanu smiled softly, his heart warmed by her words. Moments like this made him feel good about using his fame to do good things. He typed a reply, "Thank you for sharing your story. Remember, your worth isn't about what people see, it's about who you are." The next morning, Keanu posted a message online. It said, "Yesterday something happened that reminded me how important it is to treat everyone with kindness and respect. We all make mistakes and sometimes make assumptions about others, but those assumptions can hurt people in ways we don't always see. Let's all try to be better. Let's lead with kindness and remember that every person we meet has a story worth hearing." Keanu's message quickly spread online. Millions of people liked it, and many shared their own thoughts and experiences, agreeing with him. People all over the world started talking about how they could be kinder and more understanding. Because of Keanu's actions, the boutique decided to make things right. The store's management worked with charity organizations to help people in need and began hosting events to teach people how to be kind and inclusive. The store also invited Keanu to come back, this time as a special guest at a charity event they were hosting. Keanu, staying true to his nature, accepted the invitation. He didn't go for the fame or attention. He went because he believed in supporting causes that helped others. At the charity event, the young salesperson who had made the mistake approached Keanu with a nervous look. "Jonathan Reed," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I just want to thank you. Not just for forgiving me, but for teaching me something I will never forget. I'm truly sorry for how I treated you." Keanu placed a comforting hand on the young man's shoulder and said, "Growth starts with acknowledging our mistakes. What matters now is how you move forward. Keep treating people with kindness and respect, and you'll make a difference." The story of what happened quickly spread even further, starting many important conversations around the world about how we treat others. People began sharing their own experiences of being judged unfairly. One college student shared how she had been turned away from a job interview because she didn't wear the right clothes, even though she had worked hard to buy the best outfit she could afford. A retired veteran wrote about the time he was ignored at a car dealership just because he wasn't wearing designer clothes. These weren't just stories, they were examples of how many people were unfairly judged. Keanu's actions inspired people to think more about how they treated others and to make sure they were being kind and understanding. The corporate office at the boutique saw the public reaction and knew they had to make changes. Sitting in their glass-walled conference room, the executives discussed what had happened. "This is a public relations nightmare," one executive said as he looked through the endless stream of negative comments online. "If we don't act quickly, this could hurt our reputation." "It's more than just PR," another executive chimed in. "This is about our core values. If people see us as elitist and judgmental, we've already failed." The CEO, a composed woman in her 50s, spoke up and broke the silence. "We need to do better. Not just to save face, but because it's the right thing to do. This isn't just one employee's mistake, it's a reflection of our culture. Let's use this as an opportunity to redefine who we are." Over the next few weeks, the company launched several new initiatives to make the store more inclusive and respectful. They rolled out mandatory training for all employees about empathy, kindness, and understanding. They also began donating some of their profits to non-profit organizations that helped underprivileged communities. Back at the boutique, the young salesperson who had made the mistake started to change too. He realized how wrong he had been and felt deeply sorry. One afternoon during a break, he sat down with a colleague. "Can I ask you something?" he asked hesitantly. "Of course," she replied. "Have you ever judged someone like I did with Jonathan Reed without even meaning to?" he asked. She nodded slowly and said, "I think we all have in one way or another. But what really matters is what we do when we realize we've made a mistake. You're already on the right track by trying to learn and grow from this." The young man nodded, though he still felt guilty. "I just feel like I let everyone down. The store, the team, myself." His colleague placed a reassuring hand on his arm and said, "We all make mistakes. What defines us is how we move forward. You've already started by admitting your mistake." With this advice in mind, the young man threw himself into the training. He asked lots of questions, took notes, and reflected on his past actions. Slowly, he started seeing the world differently, and he realized how important it was to be kind to everyone. A few weeks later, Keanu decided to return to the boutique, not to make another big statement, but to see if the changes had really taken root. He walked into the store dressed casually, just like before. This time, when he entered, the young salesperson greeted him with a genuine smile and warmth. "Welcome back, sir," he said. "It's an honor to have you here." Keanu smiled and said, "Thank you. It's good to see you again." As they talked, the salesperson didn't just try to sell a product. He connected with Keanu, asking him about what he liked and listening carefully to his preferences. When Keanu finally made a purchase, the young man handed him the bag with a sincere comment. "Thank you for giving me a second chance. It means more than I can say." Keanu smiled and replied, "We all deserve second chances. What matters is what we do with them." News of Keanu's quiet return and the changes at the boutique spread again, sparking conversations about humility, forgiveness, and growth. People began to share their stories of how the young salesperson had grown. Customers who had once been upset with the store came back, not just for the luxury items but because they saw the store's commitment to respect and kindness. Keanu's story continued to inspire people all over the world, reminding them that kindness is the most powerful thing we can give each other. The next time you see someone who looks different or doesn't seem to fit in, take a moment to connect. Ask a question, offer a smile, or just say something kind. You never know whose life you might change or whose story you might hear. Back at the boutique, the young salesperson kept thinking about how his life had changed after meeting Keanu Reeves. His new way of thinking wasn't just changing his work life but also his personal life. One evening, while having dinner with his family, he decided to share the story of what had happened. "I thought I was just doing my job," he admitted, his voice full of regret. "But I was really just protecting my own ideas about people. Meeting Jonathan Reed made me realize how much I had been missing out on. I had let chances to connect with people slip by because I assumed too much about them." His father, a man who didn't usually talk much, nodded thoughtfully. He said, "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong. But it takes even more courage to change." Those words stuck with the young man. Over the next few months, he started looking for chances to connect with people in ways he had never done before. He volunteered at local shelters, helped organize community events, and even trained new employees at the boutique, sharing his story as a lesson in growing and being humble. While the boutique did well and people around the world kept thinking about the lesson from the incident, Keanu stayed humble and grounded. One quiet afternoon, he made an unannounced visit to a homeless shelter in downtown Los Angeles, one of the places he had supported by buying watches. When Keanu walked into the shelter, the staff greeted him warmly and were excited to see him. But Keanu wasn't there for attention. He was there to talk to people. He spent hours listening to the residents, hearing their stories and sharing some of his own. He didn't just give them kind words. He gave them his time, his presence, and his belief that they mattered. One man, a former musician who had fallen on hard times, thanked Keanu for his kindness. "You don't know how much this means to us," he said, his voice full of emotion. Keanu placed his hand on the man's shoulder and simply said, "You matter. You're not alone." This moment, just one small act of kindness, meant a lot to that man and reminded him that he was worth something. Keanu's simple words reminded him and many others that their lives mattered. As the weeks passed, Keanu's actions continued to make a difference. His kindness and respect inspired people everywhere, from offices to schools, from luxury stores to homeless shelters. Keanu didn't care about getting attention or praise for his actions. For him, it was about living his values and inspiring others to do the same. In a world that often focuses on how people look or what they have, Keanu's quiet example reminded everyone that simple acts of kindness can change lives. The story of Keanu's kindness didn't stop there. People started talking about it everywhere. Social media began sharing stories of breaking through judgment and connecting with others. One story that stood out came from a barista in Seattle, who shared his experience with a regular customer. "He always came in wearing the same old coat and carrying a beaten-up bag," the barista said. "I thought he was poor, but one day he gave me a huge tip and told me, 'Thanks for being kind.' It's hard to find that these days." Turns out he's a retired doctor who works at a free clinic. "I learned that people are more than they seem." This story really resonated with people and it quickly spread online. Soon the campaign grew beyond the internet. In different cities, people organized events where they volunteered to help others. They helped in places like homeless shelters, food banks, and centers for elderly people. The message was clear. Everyone deserves to feel respected, no matter what their situation is. One group even organized kindness days, where people performed random acts of kindness. They cleaned parks, delivered meals, and simply offered words of encouragement to strangers. At the boutique, the staff began to believe in their new philosophy. The store became a symbol of inclusivity, where everyone was treated with respect, and more people of all kinds of backgrounds started visiting. The young salesperson, now one of the store's rising stars, helped teach new workers how important it was to treat each customer with respect. One day he shared his story with the team. "I used to think my job was just about selling expensive things," he said. "But Jonathan Reed taught me it's about making sure everyone feels valued. That's what makes people come back, how we make them feel, not just the price of what they buy." His words inspired the team, helping them understand that creating a welcoming atmosphere was more important than simply selling items. While the world kept buzzing about the incident, Keanu quietly kept doing good deeds. He began helping a project that gave professional clothes to people who needed them. He worked with charities to create pop-up shops where people could find clothes for job interviews or other important events. The project was called Everyone Belongs, to remind people that everyone deserves respect. At one of these events, Keanu made a surprise visit. As he walked through the rows of clothes, he stopped to talk to people, listening to their stories and giving them words of encouragement. One young woman, who had just left an abusive relationship, thanked Keanu with tears in her eyes. "You don't know how much this means," she said, holding a blazer for her job interview. "For the first time in a long time, I feel like I have a chance." Keanu smiled and said, "You always had a chance. Now go show them who you are." His words gave the woman hope and strength to move forward. Keanu's project quickly gained attention from other famous people, and soon the Everyone Belongs project expanded. It didn't just give out clothes, it started offering lessons on things like how to write a resume, how to do well in interviews, and how to handle money. At a press event for the project, Keanu spoke briefly. His words were simple but powerful. "This isn't about me. It's about all of us. We all have the power to make someone's life better, even with a kind word or just treating them with respect. When we do that, we make the world better in ways we can't even see." His message struck a chord with everyone in the room. It reminded them that kindness doesn't require anything big or flashy. It just requires small, meaningful actions every day. Keanu's story kept spreading. It became part of school lessons about kindness and leadership. In one classroom in New York, the teacher shared Keanu's story with the students. When the teacher asked, "What did we learn from this?" one boy raised his hand. "Don't judge people by how they look," he said confidently. The teacher nodded and said, "Exactly. But what else?" A girl sitting near the front added, "Even if someone is mean to you, you don't have to be mean back. You can show them a better way." The teacher smiled. "That's right. Remember, kindness isn't just about being nice when people are watching. It's about doing it because it's the right thing to do." The students left that lesson with something far more valuable than any textbook knowledge. An understanding of the power they held to make the world a little kinder, one interaction at a time. Inspired by Keanu's story, a 16-year-old girl named Sophie from Los Angeles decided to start her own campaign at school. She called it "See Beyond the Surface," and it encouraged students to look past how people look and treat everyone with kindness. Sophie printed posters and placed them around campus. She also organized events where students could share stories of times they had been judged or felt left out and how they overcame those moments. At one of these events, a shy student named Liam stood up to speak. His hands trembled as he held the microphone. "I used to be scared to come to school because people made fun of me for my clothes," he said quietly. "But hearing about this campaign made me feel like I belong here." The room erupted into applause, and Sophie's heart swelled with pride. Her small idea had grown into something much bigger, creating a community where kindness and understanding were important. Meanwhile, at a prestigious business school in Boston, Keanu's story had become a case study in leadership. A professor used the incident to teach students about the importance of empathy and integrity in the corporate world. The professor said, "What Keanu taught us wasn't just about business. It was about how we can show respect and kindness, no matter what our job is." He didn't need to be flashy or powerful. He was kind because it was the right thing to do. As more people learned about Keanu's actions, the story began inspiring them to treat others with more respect. From classrooms to boardrooms, from social media campaigns to quiet moments of connection, Keanu's story was a reminder to people everywhere that small, kind actions can create a big change. Keanu never looked for fame or attention. He didn't care if people knew his name. His goal was simply to make the world a little better. And in the end, his actions did just that, one small act of kindness at a time. Years later, Keanu's story still inspired people. It was a reminder that it's not about the big, flashy things you do, but the small, meaningful actions you take to show kindness and respect. In one classroom in Brooklyn, New York, a teacher shared Keanu's story with middle school students. When the teacher asked, "What can we learn from this?" one boy raised his hand and said, "You shouldn't judge people by how they look." The teacher nodded and smiled. "That's right. And what else?" A girl from the back row added, "Kindness doesn't need to be big to matter. It's the little things that can change someone's day." Keanu's story would continue to live on, not just as a tale of one person's quiet kindness, but as a movement that had touched the hearts of people everywhere. The professor asked the students a question during a class. One student raised his hand and said, "Keanu Reeves didn't just talk about kindness, he showed it. He could have used his power to punish the store, but instead he used it to teach a lesson." The professor smiled and said, "Exactly. True leadership is not about being in charge or bossing others around. It's about inspiring people to be better, not just by talking, but by doing kind things." The students left the class that day thinking about how to be better leaders, not just in business but in their lives too. After Keanu's story became known, a group of young people started something called the Kindness Network. The goal was simple: to connect people from all around the world through kind acts. People could share their stories of kindness online, and these stories were shown on a map that people could click on to see how kindness was spreading everywhere. The Kindness Network wasn't just about Keanu's story, it was about the power of small acts of kindness and how they can make the world a better place. Every person had a chance to make a difference no matter where they were from or what their background was. This network grew quickly as people from all walks of life shared how they were helping others. One story that stood out was from a farmer in India who talked about how a stranger helped him rebuild his home after a big flood. This was not an easy thing to do, but the stranger did it without expecting anything in return, showing how a simple act of kindness could change someone's life. Another story came from a nurse in Brazil. She spoke about how one simple thank you from a patient made her feel better during one of the hardest days of her career. She had been feeling tired and worn out, but that small moment of appreciation reminded her that the work she did truly mattered. These stories were just the beginning of a movement that would grow much bigger. As the Kindness Network grew, it became more than just a website for sharing stories. It became a global movement, a reminder that kindness isn't something you just talk about. It's something you show through your actions. Keanu's quiet act of compassion in a boutique had inspired a worldwide ripple effect that touched countless lives. He didn't do it to become famous, but his actions sparked something bigger than he could have ever imagined. His simple lesson, that kindness is a responsibility and it has the power to change the world, was now being passed from person to person, and the impact could be seen everywhere. One story that really stuck with Keanu was from a young boy in Africa. The boy had seen a video about Keanu, and it inspired him to start a community garden. The boy explained that he had thought, "What can I do to help?" So he decided to create a garden to provide food for struggling families. It wasn't a huge garden, but it was a start and it made a difference. Keanu smiled as he read the post, thinking to himself, "It's everything." It wasn't about how big or small the act was. What mattered was the intention behind it and how it was shared with others. As time passed, Keanu's story inspired even more people to act with kindness. Young people began to lead with compassion in their own lives. They started projects, helped others, and used their voices to promote understanding and empathy. One of the most powerful examples came from a group of high school students who organized a march in their town. They carried signs that said, "Kindness is strength," and "See the person, not the surface." Their message was clear. Kindness is a powerful force that can make the world a better place. It was a reminder that kindness isn't just about being nice to those close to you, it's about showing empathy for everyone no matter who they are or where they come from. Keanu's story was not just for one store, one city, or one moment. It was a lesson for everyone everywhere. His actions showed that true leadership isn't about being the boss or controlling others. It's about leading with compassion and inspiring others to do the same. And it wasn't just Keanu who was making a difference. People all around the world, inspired by his example, were stepping up and creating lasting change in their communities. One example of this came from Nadia, a midwife from Sudan. Nadia had been deeply moved by Keanu's story, and she wanted to make a difference in her own community. She started a program to train young women in her village to become healthcare workers. Nadia said, "Kindness isn't just about words. It's about action. It's about using what you have to help those who have less." She believed that by helping young women gain skills, they could go on to help others and create a ripple effect of kindness and care. Nadia's story touched everyone at the Kindness Summit, an event that brought together changemakers from around the world to share their ideas for building a more compassionate world. The Kindness Summit, held in Geneva, was a place where people from different countries could meet and talk about how they were making the world better. The keynote speaker at the inaugural summit was Keanu Reeves himself. Standing in front of a huge crowd, Keanu said, "I'm not a politician. I'm not an expert. I just believe in kindness. What started as one moment in a store has turned into something much bigger. This isn't about me. It's about all of you, about everyone who chooses to lift someone up instead of bring them down." The crowd cheered and gave Keanu a standing ovation, but he was quick to give the spotlight to others. He stepped back and let the other speakers, including teachers, doctors, and community leaders, share their own stories of how they were changing lives. One of the most moving moments came when a teacher from Kenya spoke about how her community had come together to build a library for the children who didn't have access to books. This project had a huge impact on the children's education and helped them dream of brighter futures. Even the business world began to take notice of the power of kindness. Companies started to integrate kindness into their practices and business models. One big tech company created a program called Code with Care, where they provided free coding lessons to kids who didn't have access to computers or technology. A luxury hotel chain started a program called Stay with Kindness, offering free stays for families who had to travel for medical reasons. Even the boutique where Keanu's story had started became a leader in corporate social responsibility. The store partnered with a nonprofit called Everyone Belongs to promote inclusivity and regularly hosted workshops to help other businesses become more inclusive. The CEO of the boutique often spoke about how Keanu's quiet act of kindness had changed the direction of the company. She explained, "We owe so much to Jonathan Reed, not just for his grace in that moment but for the lesson he left us with, that every interaction is an opportunity to make the world a little better." Keanu's impact wasn't just felt in the business world. Schools around the world embraced the movement too. Teachers began to incorporate lessons on empathy, respect, and kindness into their classrooms. In one school in South Korea, students started a project called Kindness Journals. Each student was given a journal to record acts of kindness they performed or witnessed. At the end of the school year, the students came together to share their stories in a big celebration. One student wrote about how they helped a classmate who struggled with math, and another described how they stood up for a friend who was being bullied. Every story, no matter how small, was celebrated as a step toward creating a kinder, more inclusive world. Through all of this, Keanu remained as humble as ever. He didn't want fame or recognition for his actions. He simply wanted to help others. He continued to support causes close to his heart, often in quiet, unpublicized ways. One evening, while sitting on a park bench in Los Angeles, Keanu watched a group of children playing nearby. Their laughter filled the air, reminding him of the simple joys that often go unnoticed. As he sat there, a man recognized him and came over. The man hesitantly said, "Excuse me, Jonathan Reed. I just wanted to say thank you. Your story changed the way I see the world. I used to think small acts didn't matter, but now I see they do." Keanu smiled and said, "Sometimes, it's the smallest gestures that have the biggest impact." The kindness movement continued to grow and it spread across the globe. In cities, villages, and schools, people were inspired by Keanu's story to act with greater compassion and empathy. A student in Chicago started a mentorship program to help younger kids who felt out of place. A farmer in Australia began inviting struggling neighbors to his land to share his resources and knowledge. And in a small village in Ghana, a teacher used Keanu's story to teach her students about respect, dignity, and the importance of treating everyone as equals. For Keanu, the journey wasn't about creating a legacy. It was about living a truth he had always believed. That kindness, no matter how small, can create ripples that reach far beyond what anyone can imagine. One evening, while sitting in his garden, Keanu thought to himself, "The world is too big to change all at once. But if you can change one moment, one interaction, one life, that's enough." That's how the world changes. His phone buzzed with a notification from the Kindness Network. A new post had just gone live, featuring a young man from India who had built a free medical clinic in his village. The post was tagged with the phrase, "Inspired by Keanu Reeves." Keanu smiled, knowing that the ripple of kindness was still growing. The boutique incident had become more than just a story. It was a symbol of how even the smallest acts of kindness could spark waves of change. And while the world continued to grow and evolve, one truth remained constant. Kindness is a gift that keeps on giving. Keanu quietly lived his life, continuing to spread that gift in ways both big and small. He proved that the most extraordinary legacies are built not on fame or fortune, but on the simple, powerful choice to lead with love. If you enjoyed this story, share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories filled with adventure, mystery, and excitement. Your support means the world and it helps keep these stories coming. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.